Today on Continuum, you're going to meet a small team of people who are living life to the fullest in some of the most amazing places in the world. Somewhere way back in the timeline of our last 30 years of ministry in Asia, the favor of God really began to break open on the ministry, and God began to do some great things. And we really had a heart to be able to share that with the people that sent us, the people in Canada, particularly our ministry partners. And so as this was brewing in my heart, I'm wondering, God, how are we going to be able to really share back? Because, you know, you just photocopy a newsletter and you send it, and it's about the best you can do, you know, for the most part. And I was back in Canada one time, sitting in the Miracle Channel in the studio audience of a program that was being taped. And a prophet that was on the set came down after they had finished their taping, and he recognized me from a meeting we'd had years ago, and he said, "Al, God wants you to be on TV." And I thought, well, you know what, that would be something for a missionary to be able to do that. But, you know, as we began to let that brew in our hearts, to think, okay, God, how could we do this? It really is a lot simpler than the way a lot of people make it look, you know. And so eventually we talked to some of the people in the ministry and began to, you know, toss some ideas around, like, how could we do this? And the Miracle Channel said, you know, we'd love to give you the time for free, the airtime for free. And we thought, well, there's a real opportunity, a real open door. So we ended up buying a little computer and a camera, and we began to produce television in Thailand, Continuum TV. And what excitement it broke open on the ministry and all of our team, because all of a sudden now we're recording the things that God's doing. And we never did become a media ministry. We never intended to and don't want to be. Basically, we are missionaries who take cameras wherever we go and then bring it home and edit it and send it to the Miracle Channel or put it on the web and so on, so that the people at home really can see what's going on. And the interest that stirred, not only just being able to report back in a real vivid way, but also the excitement that it stirs in our own ministry team, the celebration that it brings when we can look at what God has done. And now we have a neat thing we call Continuum Night. We have a worship night every Thursday night in the ministry here, where we spend time just worshiping God. But before we do that, we watch the week's episode of Continuum. And it's really neat, because all the people in the ministry are the first ones. It's like the preview, right, of the episode. And we all watch the one that you're going to be watching on TV this week, and then pray for it and believe God that God is going to touch your heart through the ministry of Continuum. And so to me, this has been a real miracle, a real exciting thing that God has just opened up. And then since then, He's really been able to bring the creative people into our team. We've got a very small team, but we have a very, very creative team. And in fact, somebody just asked me, how do you get such good video? And I said, you know what? It's not about the equipment. It's not about the software or anything. It's about the creativity that God puts on the inside of people. And when we cast the vision and they begin to rise up in that creativity, you know what you get? You get Continuum Media. A continuum is an expanse that's made up of an innumerable number of points. And right now, you and I are probably a long ways from each other, maybe thousands of miles. But to get from where you are to where I am, if you took it one step at a time, you would get here. The interesting thing about the continuum that we work in is that every step is something different and something new. And oftentimes, you know, when we come to other countries, we see people that have such a heart to serve God. And one thing that we've always witnessed is that people will give us their best.
I'm the producer of Continuum, the show that you're watching right now. And so I've been quite busy here in Thailand between putting together video reports, putting together this program that you're watching, keeping people connected that are here on the missions field with their family and friends and churches back in North America or in Europe, wherever that might be.
So then when we come to the producing a TV program from zero, I mean, that's amazing, really.
There's been many hours spent behind the camera, in front of the camera. There's the two of us, and now actually we've trained up a few people in the ministry, and so in the fall we'll have a larger crew because we've got the students coming back, and we're looking forward to seeing them being used.
And that's absolutely necessary, isn't it, Renee? I mean, there is no physically possible way that we can produce a half hour of high-end television. Our television is very exciting.
Yes.
And very seldom do you see a scene like this where we're sitting here talking, and which will go on for a few minutes. But most of our program is clips that last somewhere between 3 to 5 seconds.
Yes.
So when you think of half an hour, how many thousand clips is that? Plus all the other that has been, it's impossible to produce that in a week.
Right.
And so we have to have
just
people.
the two of us.
That's right, with just the two of us. We have to have more editing suites going and more people working there. And and we've been working 14-hour days.
Yeah.
One of the greatest challenges that we face as a media team is learning how to take pictures in different countries. We're in Pakistan right now, and it's totally different from anything we've been in before. People crowd around, they will not back up and give us room to take a shot. There's so many faces in the camera lens that we can't see what we want to see. Opposite to the Philippines, where they wouldn't let us take any pictures. A few moments ago, a policeman came along and had to help clear the crowds out so we could get our shot in this market. But the people are gathered around. There's probably 200 people watching us take this shot because they just want to be on TV. You can see the destruction around us here, but even more tangible than that is the fear of the people in this area. Because when this natural disaster hit, 53,000 people were affected, over 5,000 dead. There's still 1,000 bodies in this area unaccounted for. And when we drove down here, we got here on Monday about noon after a 15-hour drive from our home base in Sriracha, out of the vans and straight into the refugee camps to be able to begin to minister to those people in such desperate need. I'm in Hanoi in northern Vietnam, known as one of the most antagonistic areas against the Christian church. In many countries where we go, we see that persecution is laws against certain activities. For example, in China, it's against meeting together with unsanctioned meetings. And so it doesn't matter why you're meeting, it's illegal, and that will be stopped if the police find out. But in this nation, it's a little bit different. You can see that I'm sitting in a very religious surrounding here, and there is religion all over this nation. And, you know, of course, communism is supposed to be an atheistic theology, and we don't see atheism here at all. We see worship of all kinds of things, which is allowed freely and is not persecuted except the church. Of course, there's a government church that is very religious, very dead and dry. Their sermons are approved by the government and that kind of thing, and everything is very much controlled. And of course, then there's the underground church, very persecuted. Obviously, it's an illegal setup, an illegal church. You're not supposed to have an underground church that's not licensed. That makes perfect sense. Did you ever wonder how the spies got in and out of Canaan land without getting caught? But what they saw obviously scared them. But they met with many surprises and many blessings in that country that they had to go back home and report. As we've come into Nepal this week to begin looking around at what God wants to do in this nation in an apostolic sense, we were ready for some surprises. But the surprise we met was probably one of the biggest surprises I've ever had in my life.
It's chest pain and
When we landed in Nepal, basically they cleared off the airplane and then they opened up the back door and they put Dad on this metal stretcher, and then there was like 12 guys yelling and screaming.
And the stretcher's going way down, like I'm hanging onto the stretcher. If I'd actually been unconscious, I'd have probably rolled off the stretcher, down the stairs onto the tarmac, you know?
What's your nationality?
Canadian.
That's it, right?
That's my passport and my dad's passport. They took Kim into the airport to get us our visas and everything else like that, and we just went straight to the hospital from there.
As you've watched this VBCI race unfold over the last few weeks on Continuum, you've seen some amazing changes take place in the lives of these up-and-coming disciples. Now, we're training people that are going to be able to reach the nations of Asia for Jesus Christ.